When you picture a Viking, what do you see? I'm guessing it's a huge, bearded warrior, right? Swinging an axe, maybe a horned helmet on his head, standing on a longship ready for battle? Yeah, that's the image we all have. Well, I've got some news for you.
That image is almost entirely wrong. For starters, Vikings did not wear horned helmets. And actually, most of the people we call Vikings, they weren't warriors at all. They were farmers, traders, craftspeople, and explorers. So if the Hollywood version is basically a fantasy, who were these people for real? And what drove them to leave their homes and sail across the seas?
Okay, let's figure this out together. Here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to bust some big myths. Then we'll look at the land they came from, how their society was set up, and the many different lives they lived. We'll finish up with a couple of seriously surprising facts and a quick knowledge check to see what you've learned. Let's get into it.
All right, first things first, just like we said, before we can really understand who these people were, we have to get our words straight. You know, the word Viking itself is our biggest clue. In their own language, Old Norse, the word vikingur most likely meant a person on a raid, a pirate. Now think about that for a second. Going a Viking was something you did, like a summer job or a big adventure. It wasn't who you were all day, every day. The huge majority of Norse people were farmers who never, ever went on a single raid. So why did some of them leave? Why go raiding or trading at all? To answer that, you really have to look at where they came from, Scandinavia. That's modern-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And when you look at pictures of it, it's just breathtaking. I mean, why on earth would anyone want to leave a land of these spectacular fjords, these huge gashes of sea cutting deep into these giant mountains? The answer is actually pretty simple, because you can't farm a cliff. For all its stunning beauty, Norway especially had very little good land for farming. And as the population grew, they just ran out of space. If you were the oldest son, great, you got the family farm. But if you were the second or third son, you got nothing. You had to go out into the world and make your own fortune. And this geography didn't just push them out. It basically gave them directions. The Danes, who could easily get to the North Sea, tended to go west, towards England and France. The Norwegians sailed northwest, across those wild seas to Scotland, Ireland, and eventually all the way to Iceland. And the Swedes? They looked east, following the big rivers deep into modern Russia, some going all the way down to the Byzantine Empire. Their own homeland literally pointed them toward their destiny. Okay, so we're starting to get why they left, but what kind of society were they leaving behind? Well, it was way more organized than you might think. Norse society basically had three main groups. Up at the top, you had the jarls. These were the rich nobles and chieftains who owned all the land and the ships. Down at the bottom were the thralls, who were slaves, often people captured in raids. But the biggest group, the real heart of their society, were the karls. These were free farmers, they owned their own land, they could carry weapons, and, this is super important, they had a voice. They could vote at the local assembly, which had the awesome name of the Thing. And get this is something that might really surprise you. A Norse woman had rights that were basically unheard of anywhere else in Europe at the time. She could own her own property, she could run the farm all by herself while her husband was away, and in some situations, she could even divorce him. Women in England wouldn't have rights like that for hundreds and hundreds of years. So no, it wasn't an equal society like we think of today, but for its time, it was incredibly complex and in some ways way ahead of the curve. And this complexity wasn't just in their laws, it was in their whole culture. The idea that Vikings were just mindless barbarians, it completely falls apart when you look closer. They had a rich culture long before the raiding ever started. They told these epic stories called sagas, all about gods and monsters and heroes. They had their own alphabet, called runes, that they carved into stone and wood. They made beautiful jewelry and amazing metalwork. This was a world filled with powerful gods like Odin and Thor, and big ideas about fate and honor. They weren't savages. They were just a different kind of sophisticated. So let's try and pull all of this together. We know they came from a beautiful place that didn't have enough farmland. We know they had a complex society and a rich culture. So, were they raiders, or traders, or farmers? Well, the honest answer is all of the above. They left for a ton of reasons, all happening at once. The land shortage was the main push, but political fights also played a part. If your side lost a battle, you might have to leave town. Trade was a massive pull. They were building huge trade networks. Sometimes raiding was just trading with swords when you didn't like the price. And you can't forget pure adventure. Their culture really valued fame and a good reputation, and a successful voyage was the fastest way to get it. And this is where we see the real truth of it. They didn't really separate these jobs. The very same person could be a farmer in the spring, planting crops for the year. In the summer, he might become a trader, sailing to a market far away. In the autumn, he might turn into a raider, looking for wealth. And then, in the long, dark winter, he'd be a storyteller, gathered with his family by the fire, sharing tales of everything he'd done. The Vikings weren't just one thing, they were many things, all at once. And that's what makes them so cool. Okay, before we have a little quiz, here are 2 quick facts that are going to completely blow up that old dusty image of the dirty, barbaric Viking. First up, Vikings were clean, like really clean. In fact, English writers back then actually complained that the Norsemen were suspiciously well-groomed. They combed their hair, changed their clothes, and they bathed every single Saturday. The Old Norse word for Saturday, laugardagur, literally means washing day. Archaeologists are constantly digging up combs, tweezers, even ear scoops from Viking sites. So much for the grubby barbarian, huh? And the second fact? It goes right back to the beginning. The horned helmet. So where did it come from? It didn't come from history. It came from the theater. The year was 1876. The helmets were made by a costume designer for a big German opera by a composer named Wagner. Just think about that. It's a stage prop. It just looked cool and dramatic on stage, and the image stuck. An opera prop became one of history's biggest misunderstandings. All right, it is time for a quick knowledge check. Let's see what you remember.
Question 1. What does the word Viking most likely mean? Is it A, a warrior from Scandinavia, B, a person on a pirate raid, C, a sailor or navigator, or D, a Norse farmer? The correct answer is B. Viking described an activity, going on a raid, not what a person was all the time.
Question 2. What was the main geographical reason many Norse people left Scandinavia? Was it A, they were driven out by other tribes, B, a volcanic eruption, C, land shortage, or D, their crops repeatedly failed? The answer is C. The biggest reason pushing them to leave was a shortage of farmable land, especially in Norway. Question 3. What were the 3 main social groups in Norse society? Was it A, warriors, priests, and farmers, B, jarls, karls, and thralls, C, kings, knights, and serfs, or D, chieftains, merchants, and fishermen? The correct answer is B. Norse society was divided into the noble jarls, the free farmer karls, and the enslaved thralls. Question 4. What was unusual about the rights of Norse women? A, they were not allowed to own property. B, they had no legal rights. C, they could own property and even divorce. Or D, they were treated the same as other women in Europe. And the answer is C. Norse women had some remarkable legal rights for the time, including owning property and being able to start a divorce. And our final question for today. What is the main question we're trying to answer in this whole series? Is it A, when did the Viking Age begin? B, which Viking raid was the worst? C, were Vikings brutal savages or something more complicated? Or D, how were longships built? The correct answer is, of course, C. Our big question is, were the Vikings just brutal savages, or were they something far more complicated? We're going to keep exploring that, and next time we'll look at the incredible piece of technology that made it all possible, the Viking longship, the most advanced ship of its age. I'll see you then.